So in 2020, Herschel Walker is best known for being a multiple personality sycophant and supporter of Donald Trump on the wrong side of history. But 30 years ago, he's probably one of the best running backs of his era, right out of college in Georgia. Went to USFL, where he hooked up with Donald Trump, of course. Dallas eventually had him for a while. And Dallas was down to nothing in the late 1980s. They were trying to find a way after Tom Landry, after he got fired, where Jerry Jones bought the team. Now, this trade ended up being the most lopsided trade in NFL history, and probably one of the most lopsided trades in any sport, in any league worldwide. Now, the Herschel Walker trade still ranks as the largest player trade in the history of the NFL. Now, it was officially consummated on October 12, 1989, centered on, again, sending Heisman Trophy running back Herschel Walker from the Cowboys to the Minnesota Vikings, which were the arch enemies of Dallas for many years. Now, including Walker in a transaction involving the San Diego Chargers, the trade eventually involved 18 players and draft picks. At the time of the deal, the Cowboys were one of the worst teams in the league. They finished that campaign with a worse post-merger record of 115, with Jimmy Jones, the Miami championship coach, as head coach, but it was a terrible year. Steve Walsh and Troy Aikman did nothing at quarterback. They traded away their best player, while the Vikings believed that Walker was the missing piece they needed to make a Super Bowl run. Thus, Minnesota originally felt that they got the better end of the deal. Instead, the Cowboys used the draft picks acquired the trade to get the players they needed to help them win 3 straight Super Bowls in the 1990s, including Emmitt Smith. Now, meanwhile, the Vikings did not make a Super Bowl appearance with Walker, and later on, Walker returned to the Dallas Cowboys to back up Emmitt Smith. Bizarre world. Now, in his book, The Greatest Team Ever, the Dallas Cowboys Dynasty of the 1990s, which is in my collection, author Norm Hitchcock chronicled the Herschel Walker trade. 4 games into the 89 season, Jimmy Johnson came up with the idea to trade Walker while on a morning jog with his staff. Johnson felt the Cowboys were so terrible that only a blockbuster trade could help them. He briefly considered trading wide receiver Michael Irvin to the LA Raiders, but Raiders owner Al Davis essentially talked Johnson out of the trade by saying, "You're sure you want to do that? Who is going to catch passes for you?" Johnson felt that Walker was the only remaining bargaining chip they had. Now, a number of teams contacted the Cowboys when they announced they would trade Walker. The New York Giants were among the first teams to express interest, and Walker had started his professional career again at the Meadowlands under the New Jersey Generals, which were not owned by Trump at the time, but were later owned, during the USFL's 3-year run, and is amenable to a return to a Giants stadium. However, the trade would have been unfavorable for Dallas, since both teams were in the NFC East. The Atlanta Falcons entered negotiations, but eventually pulled out over fear of Walker's future contract demands would be, in the $3 to $5 million range. The most serious offer came from Dallas's old rivals, the Cleveland Browns. Now, Johnson stated the Browns offered the player a couple of future number 1 draft picks and 3 number 2s. The Cowboys felt this was a favorable offer, but they also felt that if another team were to enter the discussion, then he would generate a bidding war and thereby get more compensation. Now, Johnson and Jerry Jones decided to contact other clubs to generate buzz and create leverage. Johnson then contacted Minnesota Vikings GM Mike Lynn, and Johnson told Lynn that he was going to trade Walker to Cleveland that afternoon, and that if Minnesota would like to trade for Walker, then it would cost them players, draft picks, conditional picks, and provisions, giving Lynn a deadline of 6:30 p.m. local time. Lynn, feeling Walker was a missing piece to a Super Bowl run, faxed Johnson that he was interested, and soon after negotiations ensued. In order to get Walker to agree to a trade, the Cowboys paid him a $1.25 million exit bonus. In the original proposal, Dallas agreed to give Herschel Walker and 3 draft picks to Minnesota. In exchange, the Cowboys would get from the Vikings 5 players, 3 draft picks, and conditional picks attached to each of those 5 players, should he be cut by Dallas before February 1st, 1990. Now, one of these players that Minnesota agreed to send to Dallas, Darren Nelson, refused to report to the Cowboys. Dallas then agreed to trade Nelson to San Diego Chargers for their 5th round pick in 1990, which the Cowboys promptly sent to the Vikings. In total, this revised trade involved 18 players and draft picks, with the revised transactions as follows. Now, to Dallas, Jesse Solomon, linebacker David Howard, quarterback Isaac Holt, defensive end Alex Stewart, Minnesota's 1st, 2nd, and 6th in 1990, Minnesota's 1st and 2nd in 91, conditional on cutting Solomon and cutting Howard, Minnesota's 1st round pick in 92, conditional on cutting Holt, Minnesota's 2nd round pick in 92, the condition was met by trading with Nielsen, and Minnesota's 3rd round pick in 92, conditional on cutting Stewart. And Jimmy Johnson said in multiple reports he was going to get rid of those players anyway. Why wouldn't you? You get 5 picks in the 1st and 2nd round and 3rd round. Genius. Now to Minnesota, Herschel Walker, Dallas's 3rd round pick in 1990, San Diego's 5th round pick in 1990, Dallas's 10th round pick in 1990, and Dallas's 3rd round pick in 1991, and of course the Chargers, Darren Nelson. Now, the Vikings had originally assumed that they got the better end of the deal, not knowing at the time that head coach Jimmy Johnson was interested only in draft picks and not the players. At a press conference after a trade, Johnson bragged that he committed the Great Trade Robbery, but was criticized by various sports writers such as Randy Galloway of the Dallas Morning News. Now, Johnson waived Stewart in November of '89, then told his coaches to not start Solomon, Howard, or Holt, signaling to the rest of the league his intention to claim the draft picks. Vikings GM Mike Lynn eventually made another deal, letting the Cowboys keep the 3 players and all the conditional picks. Dallas used Minnesota's picks over the succeeding years to make trades with other teams around the NFL. The picks acquired in those were then used to draft players such as Emmitt Smith, future Hall of Famer, Darren Woodson, and Russell Maryland, who was lucky enough to meet his father at the American Bowl in '95. Russell's father told me, he said, Jimmy Johnson screwed the Vikings. I think he's right. Now, these players would help the Cowboys win again those 3 Super Bowls, got in 4 straight NFC Championship games, losing to San Francisco in that quartet. There would have been a quartet, but lost to San Francisco on the road in that NFC game. In other words, the trade of Walker to the Vikings contributed largely to the Cowboys' success in the early 1990s. For this reason, the noted website ESPN.com listed as the 8th most lopsided trade in sports history. Bullshit. It's number 1. I don't care what anybody says. Even the Gretzky trade. Because the Gretzky trade didn't win Edmonton a cup because he had Messier, but didn't win the Kings a cup either. So this really changed the fortune, and this was the $5 billion trade. I'll tell you why $5 billion. The Dallas Cowboys in the 5 years were on that Super Bowl run, made $5 billion in profit, ladies and gentlemen. $5 billion. So you tell me it's not the greatest trade of all time. Now, the pick acquired by Dallas. The 1st round pick in '90 was used as part of a deal with the Steelers to move up from 21st to 17 overall in 1990, where they took Emmitt Smith. Minnesota's 2nd round pick in '90 was used as a part of a deal to get the San Francisco 49ers 3rd round pick in 1990, and it was used as a part of the deal with Pittsburgh to get the 17 overall. Now, the 6th round pick in '90 was used part of a deal to the Raiders to get defensive back Stan Smagala. The 1st round pick in '91 eventually had a deal with the Patriots, and he took 1st overall Russell Maryland. Now, the 2nd round pick in '91 was used as part of a trade with Houston to acquire the very talented running back Alonzo Highsmith, who did work out in Dallas, but he was a good prospect that they were hoping for, but never worked. Now, the 1st round pick in '92 was used as part of a deal, again to get New England's 1st and 2nd round picks in the '97 draft, 19 and 37. 19 overall was then used as part of a deal to get the Atlanta Falcons' 17 overall pick, where he took Kevin Smith. 37 overall for New England was then used to select Darren Woodson. Now, the Minnesota 2nd round pick in '92 was used as part of a deal to acquire 2 draft picks for Kansas City. The Chiefs picks were then used in exchange with the Washington Redskins, and when he moved up to 3rd, he selected cornerback Clayton Holmes. Now, the 3rd round pick in '92 was used as part of the New England 1st and 2nd round pick. Complicated, but how it works here, ladies and gentlemen. Let's look again. Emmitt Smith, Stan Smaglia, Russell Maryland, Alonzo Highsmith, Kevin Smith, Darren Woodson, Clayton Holmes. Almost 1/3 of the Super Bowl winners squad, except for Highsmith. Now, meanwhile, the '89 Vikings were eliminated in divisional playoffs by the Super Bowl champs 49ers. Among the 4 players that the Vikings selected using Dallas picks for the trade, Mike Jones, a tight end, only spent 2 seasons with the team, and Jake Reed spent 8 seasons. A very good wide receiver. And in 1991, the Vikings re-signed Darren Nelson. The player forced Minnesota Dallas to send him to San Diego in '89 to back up Walker, and Nelson retired after 2 seasons. Now the picks acquired again by Minnesota, tight end Mike Jones, wide receiver Reggie Thornton, wide receiver Pat Newman, and wide receiver Jake Reed. Now, because the Vikings did not make a Super Bowl appearance since the trade, Walker would play only 2 more seasons with the Vikings, who failed to make the playoffs in both years. He then signed with Philadelphia for '92, with the Giants in '95, and spent his last season with the Cowboys in '96. 17 years later, in 2007, the trade was still an easy target for satire, as one ESPN columnist assessing the impact of free agency on the NFL, instituted in 1993, noted that it had almost entirely replaced significant trades in doing so. So look away, one of the greatest shortcuts to becoming a Super Bowl champion was fleecing the Vikings. Now, the trade was detailed in the 30 for 30 film, The Great Trade Robbery. Not the train robbery, but the Great Trade Robbery. Now, end result of the trade at the end of the '95 season, which, again, the last Super Bowl. 3 Super Bowl wins, Emmitt Smith, Maryland, Holmes, Smith, and Woodson, and Minnesota, 0 Super Bowl appearances, and wide receiver Jake Reed. Now, as a longtime sports reporter and a longtime sports editor and Dallas fan, I remember mentioning the trade, and when came back, if they would have kept all those players, they could have easily won 5 Super Bowls. 3.5, you might say, the NFC title loss, where Michael Irvin said they should have won, which I agree. Minnesota was the arch rival of Dallas for years. I think they knocked Dallas out of the playoffs 2 or 3 times, stopped them from a couple of Super Bowls. But why would you think trading all the draft picks? Were you not scouting? Like nowadays, everybody's being scouted. There were so many good players coming from the SEC, Russell Maryland and Emmitt Smith and a few others. They already showed Dallas was getting good players like Troy Aikman and Steve Walsh, 2 very quality quarterbacks with just, mid-range picks. Dallas was 1-15, so you're giving the chance for the team to rebuild. But Minnesota basically said, we're going to trade the future away for the present. But Herschel Walker, at best, was 1,200 yards a season running, 600 yards passing. Sure, all-purpose yards around 2,000. But if you stop Herschel Walker, when Eric Dickerson was traded, did that make the Colts better? Like, the exception is Marshawn Lynch. That was a power back, right? So, I mean, the trade itself was so bizarre. Like, why would you give a chance for the Dallas Cowboys to reload? They were down to nothing. They were 3-13, 5-7, the strike years. They were doing nothing. After they lost to the Redskins in '83, the NFC title game, they were in the wilderness, ladies and gentlemen. You don't give gasoline to somebody that's trying to burn your house down. You don't give them the matches and the gas. That's what Minnesota did. And has Minnesota had any luck since then? No. Dallas, Dallas, that $1 billion a year franchise, that they're still there. They haven't really been knocked on the door of the Super Bowl in quite some time. But, the impact of 25 years ago still resonates. There's more Dallas fans than ever before. It's because, they were in the wilderness and he came back. And no matter how many Super Bowls Patriots win, it's not the same as this. Like, the Patriots didn't pick up 15 players for one. They didn't fleece any other team. It was just, Tom Brady and, a weakened AFC and, an inconsistent NFC. And he still lost twice to the Giants, and that's another story altogether. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, check out that 30 for 30 documentary. Check out some of the Dallas archives on YouTube. But check some of the news reports of the Herschel Walker trade, if you can find them. They're fascinating. Like, I've never seen so many sportscasters shake their head or do it a rising action, especially on TSN in Canada. If you can find it, he said, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Anyway, have a good night. Bye.